and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. A second. There we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday.
Where's that cable?
Yeah, where did that cable
Let's
go?
play Find the Cable.
Welcome to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics live on a Tuesday. Another busy week for the program. 4th of July week, my favorite time of year. Do you know what happened 250 years ago on? Let's see here. I guess it was Sunday. The 28th, whatever day that was. Yeah, Sunday. Do you know what happened 250 years ago that day, Ken?
Now, despite your constant haranguing about my birth certificate, I wasn't here.
Oh, well, I mean, I wasn't going to accuse you of being here. That would be far too old, even for you. But 250 years ago, on June 28th, the first draught, that's the word that Thomas Jefferson used to describe his first draft of the Declaration of Independence, that was handed in as they turned in their term paper and said, here is our draft.
I thought maybe you were going to say that he tried some of George Washington's beer for the first time.
No. Actually, at the time, Thomas Jefferson was 33.
Yeah.
There was a committee of people that they had put together to craft the Declaration of Independence. And there was 4 or 5 of them. Thomas Jefferson was the youngest. And on the 28th of June, 1776, they turned in what they thought was going to be their final version to the Continental Congress. Benjamin Franklin only made a couple of changes. Undeniable and sacred was changed to self-evident. And there was a couple of other grammatical things that changed. Though the final draft of the Declaration of Independence, there were some big differences from what Thomas Jefferson originally wrote. The biggest one of those, I think, is the giant paragraph about how evil slavery is. That was removed to satisfy Georgia and South Carolina so that they would vote for the Declaration of Independence. If that big section about slavery was in there, they would have lost the South. And so... Anyway, pretty cool. There's a lot of really neat things that happened 250 years ago this week. And, you know, the one that we remember is July 4th, when they actually signed the document. But there were a lot of other things that happened in the days preceding that I think it's worth your time to go back and investigate what those things were. Because, you know, often we just think of July 4th, let's go have a barbecue. There's probably a parade out there. Everybody's got flags around. Yay, us, we're America. We're amazing. And all of those things are true. This is an amazing country. It is the most prosperous, the most powerful, the most wealthy, the most charitable country the world has ever known. But there were a lot of other things that I think that you should be aware of. What was the Declaration of Independence? Well, I mean, it was the world's greatest breakup letter. It was a declaration of war. Every single person that signed that document knew exactly what they were doing by signing it. They knew that was going to put all 56 of them on the most wanted list of the British. They all knew that if the British got their hands on them, they would be hanged. Or, dismembered or put on the rack or some other really unpleasant thing. But they all knew what they were doing. They knew that they were, as the last line in the Declaration of Independence says, with firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You see, most people think that the most important line in the Declaration is the first one. It's not. It's the last line. And all 56 of those people did exactly that. The reason why you don't know, most of them, is because they either died during the revolution or they were penniless and, drifted away into obscurity. But you only know a few of them. And the reason for that is those were the ones that survived. But like I say, it's worth going back and looking at what happened this week 250 years ago. And on the podcast, I don't know, I haven't decided whether it's going to be tomorrow or on Saturday. I'm thinking probably tomorrow. We're going to talk about the first draft, the first draught, as Jefferson put it, of the Declaration of Independence. And you should go look it up. And I don't want to get too much into it.
Don't tell me what to do.
Well, you should. You should follow my advice. It's sage. See, there was a good word. Anyway,
I'm allergic to sage.
yeah, well, not this time.
So you said something that I think is bears repeating.
I say a lot of things. That
We
are worth
pledge.
repeating.
Well, yeah, don't get too high on yourself there, like
Well,
you
I did
always
fit
tell
through-
me.
I did fit through the door this morning.
Yeah,
My head did anyway.
You talk about our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honors. That means more to me now than it ever has before. Now, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not in any way trying to equate service in the state legislature with what those guys went through. I mean, they literally put their lives on the line. They would be held for treason and shot, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And when you look at what happened to most of the signers, you realize that most of them paid a price.
A heavy one.
Yes.
But I
But-
don't think you're too far off, though, Ken.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Our lives. I've said many times. People will ask me, how much time does this gig take, and it's all of it.
Yeah.
I haven't been fishing in 4 years.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not the same thing as having people out there trying to try you for treason. But it has consumed my life for the past basically 6 years of my life. Our fortunes. I retired from a very well-paying position and live on a small percentage of what I used to. I've also dedicated a small chunk of my fortune to where we're sitting,
Yes.
our lives and our fortunes and our sacred honors. And you look at the kickback,
Big
the
time.
nasty things that have been said about the conservatives, the Freedom Caucus, billboards, emails, some of them threatening. The phone messages, you've heard a few of them that show on there. I understand a little bit about the sacred honor. Nobody wants to be disliked,
No.
and nobody wants to have nasty things said about them that, especially when they're not even close to true. And I've seen my friends lose friends. I've lost friends. It is a nasty business.
And to be fair,
Shouldn't be.
it's not one side or the other. Okay. Now there are some things that the left does that you don't see very often from people who are conservative or who are on the right. But there's folks on the right that say some pretty nasty things. There's other folks that are allegedly on the right that try to destroy people. There are folks on the right and the left that lie. And Ken is exactly right. Politics is a nasty business. But if you believe in what it is that you say, if you believe in the things that you campaign on, well, then that is what's required. And I'm not going to say that always happens. I mean, there are people down in Cheyenne that they never have a word said about them. You don't see nasty news articles about them and how terrible they are. You don't see giant billboards.
That's what you're here for.
Well, yes, this is true. But the reason why you don't see those things about some of the people you don't know in the Wyoming legislature is they don't create that much of a ruckus. Because if you push back on the political establishment, well, then the knives come out. And boy, are they out. I didn't print it out because there are way too many pages to it. But there's a piece in the cow pie. Oh, by the way, before I get there, I got to ask you this, Ken.
Okay.
Are nicknames a big thing in your family? Do members of your family have them?
Not anymore. That's an interesting question, and I won't go into wasting your time with it. At one point, and it probably is a generational and a cultural thing, nicknames were a big deal. Mine was Sam.
Yours was Sam?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Had a friend of the family that could never remember my real name, so he always called me Sam.
Right.
And it just kind of stuck. And I remember in high school, everybody had nicknames.
Yeah.
And especially if you're involved in sports, they had some sort of a nickname. And that just seems to me that it's gone away.
Kind of.
But it's also gone away in my family for a different reason. But.
Well, so in my family, everybody has a nickname. Even people that don't know that they have a nickname, they have a nickname. Let me just tell you a quick story. So one of the things my dad does in winter is he's got one of his favorite possessions is his tractor. And so every winter when it snows, he gets in his tractor and he goes around and plows out the neighborhood and all of his neighbors. And so he's on about a half a block away from his house and he's plowing out this guy's driveway. And his tractor about almost runs out of fuel. And so he's got this big pile of snow in front of this guy's driveway. And he's like, crap, I got to go fill up the tractor. And so he just turns around and motors down the alleyway. Well, when he gets back into the alley, here's the homeowner out in his backyard, and he's just swearing up a storm. Dad, how dare you leave that big pile of snow in front of my driveway? And Dad looks at him and goes, and of course you'll get the word that he used here. He goes, hey, poop for brains. I'm just about out of fuel. I'll be right back. And so that guy's name is now, and Dad, of course, used the more colorful expression of this, but his name is now Poop for Brains. And there are other people that have nicknames.
That's Sierra Foxtrot Bravo, by the way.
Yes, Sierra Foxtrot Bravo. Anyway, so people have nicknames and family members. And the interesting thing about getting a nickname is you hardly ever have a choice in the matter. It's usually something you do. And it may be deserved, it may not be deserved, but you get a nickname and there's really nothing that you can do about it. And so when you do something that warrants a nickname, well, then you just have to accept it.
Yeah.
And so there is an article in the Cow Pie, and I didn't count how many pages it is, but it is all about the not so common sense, not so Republicans that have been putting up these billboards. And Claire McFarland, who will henceforth be known as McDuff. You know what a duff is in the golf?
Yep.
A duff is when you swing at the ball and
It's your show, though. I shouldn't say.
And you hit the ground before the ball, and the ball just kind of dribbles in front of the tee box. That's a duff. You duffed the ball.
We call them a stroke.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a stroke too, yes. But anyway, so there's a, probably 10-page article in the Cow Pie defending the common sense Republicans of Wyoming from Claire McDuff, henceforth to be known as Claire McFarland. Now, Ken, go ahead and play the video. Let me find out what name it is here. But here is McDuff, and it's not the one that says, here we go, yeah, so play the one that says McDuff, yeah, a tangent. Maybe.
Could be a bipartisan thing. Claire,
Don't
take us
doubt
in
me.
another direction.
Bipartisan. We're gonna need more party names if we're gonna call things in the Wyoming legislature bipartisan because
Well,
Democrats are almost a footnote, not quite, but almost. Yeah. Sorry, that was a tangent.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just a funny video from this morning. But her name is now McDuff. And the reason why is there's a jillion-page article about the not-so-common-sense Republicans. And it's entitled, Common Sense Republicans Declare War on the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. War, I tell you. It's interesting that she should use that term this week because it does, I think it has a little more emphasis this week. But let me just read you the opening paragraphs of this long piece of drivel. And I quote, in the arena of political criticism, a new political action group has declared war on the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. Casper-based attorneys and Joe Biden supporter Emily Madden and Scott Ortiz co-founded the so-called Common Sense Republicans for Wyoming Political Action Committee in March. The PAC has raised 6 billboards across larger Wyoming towns, urging people to stop the Freedom Caucus agenda and vote in the August 18th primary election. The Wyoming Freedom Caucus cast that as a statement against popular conservative ideals like lower taxes, voter ID, protections for female athletes, and school choice. Quote, they never define the agenda they oppose because it's popular, says a June 4th post by the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. Former caucus chair, Representative John Baer, posted a selfie video Friday saying, quote, I'm out here in front of this billboard because the people who put it up seem to think that we don't like it. We love it. It's got our name all over it, and we like talking about our agenda. Baer also listed popular conservative ideals and claimed, quote, I guess these folks are against all of that. And that, my friends, is probably the larger point. And I pretty much every day on social media, I ask somebody the following question. Can you name one thing that the Freedom Caucus did legislatively that conservatives would disagree with? Can you name just one thing? Is it election integrity, or is it keeping men out of girls' sports? We need to be careful how we say that because it's not women's sports. It's girls' sports. Here's the difference. Because men, generally, just about every man, is twice as strong as the average female. And so if you have a high school male on the volleyball team, for example, he's twice as strong as just about every other person there on the team anyway. And so to put it in the proper context, you need to say men in girls' sports. And I don't mean it derisively. I'm just saying that makes it a little bit clearer. It's not women's sports, not that that would make any difference. But anyway, so continuing on. Now, Emily Madden, who is one of the heads of this so-called Common Sense Republicans, and so-called Republicans, and this is getting really wordy. Anyway, she's not really a Republican, and all you got to do is look at her social media, which the Open Range Record published an article about that. Well, it was quite a while ago, but I'll bump it to the top of the list so you can read it. I also did a podcast on them. But anyway, here's what she says, quote, about the Freedom Caucus. They have great national talking points, which is why they were so popular in the first place. But you can't make an American first if you leave Wyoming behind, said Madden in a Monday email. Gutting funding for schools, gutting funding for police, fire, EMS, UW, and the Business Council. They're just saying you don't believe that Wyoming's best days are ahead. Is that what you believe, Agent 29?
Gutting. Gutting funding. If by gutting funding you mean increasing spending to be where it's never been before, even though we wouldn't particularly do that. If by gutting you mean we take 4% of somebody's budget, get real.
So let's just take those one at a time. Gutting funding for schools. Actually, school budgets increased. Nobody's budget was gutted. Not at all. It went up.
The only conceivable way you could say that they were gutted was they were no longer allowed to steal money from teachers to fund all sorts of other things.
Yes.
So we gutted that. We didn't gut it.
There was no gutting that happened there. By the way, while I'm going through this, Ken, will you look up and find out what the population of Sublette County is?
No, this is your show. You do it.
Yeah, well, I'm busy.
Yeah.
So you're the producer. Would you look that up for me? So anyway, gutting funding for schools, police, fire, and EMS. None of that happened. That is absolute bullcrap, which is the other thing that leads you, that might point you in the direction that Emily Madden and Scott Ortiz are not, I repeat, are not conservative, because any conservative in Wyoming would know that all the things that she just mentioned are a load of bullcrap. Now, the UW and the Business Council. Well, really, UW's budget didn't get cut all that much, and that one you have to put into context. Do you know what percentage of Wyoming's budget goes to the University of Wyoming, who, by the way, almost has $1 billion, almost $1 billion in their endowment? This state gives them roughly 8.6% of the total budget of the state goes to the University of Wyoming in one way, shape, or form. So that is a huge amount of money on top of the almost $1 billion they have in the bank account. Now, we could make the argument, as Agent 29 said, that, all right, so we attempted to reduce their budget by 4%. Why? Because they're doing crazy stuff like DEI and supporting sex changes in Casper. And when the legislature tells them, hey, we pay you, so these programs here, we don't want you to do them. What do? They move them around in the catalog book, and they hide them.
Yeah, that was part of it. But there's also, they're very top-heavy administratively.
Yes.
I mean, they're spending a whole lot more money to do what they do than what they really need to do, we think. And the other one is that they have been basically a sacred cow for so many years. They've enjoyed everything they ever wanted and then some.
Yes.
That campus is luxurious. The campus is covered with beautiful buildings and artwork and everything else. And if you're actually going to look at, let's slow down the spending, that's a natural place to look because it's never been tried there, and it is a big chunk of money.
So before you jump to the defense of the University of Wyoming's budget, you should probably go walk through that campus. One of the more shocking things I saw, and like Ken said, it's a beautiful campus, and pretty much everywhere you look, it's really pretty. But I was on my way to the Charlie Kirk event, which was held in the Education Auditorium, and I parked on the north side of the campus, and there was kind of I would call it a back alley, but it was right by the science building. But it's a back walkway. It's not a main thoroughfare through the university. And that thing is covered with statues and beautiful flower gardens on basically a back alleyway. Everywhere you look on that place, it's beautiful. And we do want a nice school, and we do want nice buildings. But the truth is, my friends, we spend a tremendous amount of money on that school, way more than Emily Madden or her leftist lawyer's friend, Scott Ortiz.
And we built all those buildings. They're paid for. We don't need any more right now, so we don't need to keep putting the same amount of money up there.
But it is not those things directly, anyway, that catch the ire of Wyoming legislators. It's things like this. Take a listen to this. Hold on. There we go. Got it. Now, don't feel bad if you have no idea what any of those courses are about. I had to look up a couple of them myself. Like Agent 29, my personal favorite is ecofeminism. A quick Google search of what ecofeminism is describes it thusly. Ecofeminism is a movement and theory linking the oppression of women to the exploitation of nature, arguing that patriarchal systems create hierarchies that devalue both women and the environment, leading to domination and destruction. The central idea is that the domination of women and the domination of nature stem from the same patriarchal roots, where both are seen as resources to be controlled. Ecofeminists identify patriarchy, that is, male-dominated society, and associated systems like capitalism as primary drivers of environmental degradation and gender inequality. I bet you didn't know that. Okay.
If we just call it Father Nature, we won't be so upset.
Did any of that make sense? I mean, you have to basically have a philosophy degree to get all that, but that's the
a drug-induced philosophy degree.
Yes. Okay, but that's not the best part. We're getting to Agent 29. Patriarchy and capitalism are responsible for the domination of women and destruction of the environment. So not only are the ideas kind of communistic, that is, capitalism is responsible for the destruction of the planet, it's also responsible for the domination of every woman in the state, or country as it were. And you are paying for that course to be taught at the University of Wyoming. Absolutely fantastic. After Agent 29 asked that question about ecofeminism, the ball was passed to President Ed Seidel of the University of Wyoming. Now, I would play for you his response and his explanation of ecofeminism, but he didn't give one. Instead, he pawned it off on the dean of the Helm School. And she didn't explain the course either, except to say that they don't offer that course anymore. In other words, they got caught red-handed, and they decided that it probably wasn't a good idea to teach that course anymore, as if it ever was to begin with. After the answer, non-answer given by Seidel and the dean of the school, John Baer, co-chairman of the Appropriations Committee, redirected the question back at Ed Seidel. Here's what he said.
Appreciate that, Dean. Unfortunately, what you've just described is something that is metastasizing, it sounds like, across the university. So, President Seidel, if you could just help me understand, is this really a direction that the university should be going?
Okay, so the whole reason why I played that long thing for you is twofold. One, I'm not a fan of recreating the wheel, and I think that portion of the podcast describes pretty clearly that maybe, just maybe, we're spending a wee bit too much money on all of these courses. But these are the things that that you're paying for, and if you want to get a degree, here's what you might be.
This is from the website on the Hobbs School. And I thought perhaps I would seek an undergraduate.
Okay, so if you don't know, that's Agent 29, and he's on the Appropriations Committee, and he's seeking a degree. Here's what Ken said. And I don't, Ken, I mean, make sure that your head can fit through that door when we're done with the program.
Minor in sustainability. And if I were to do so, I would be required to take 9 credit hours of foundations in sustainability, and then another class in campus sustainability. And then I would have my choice of the following: social justice in the 21st century, environmental ethics, global justice, environmental justice, environmental sociology, food, health, and justice, diversity and justice in natural resources, or perhaps my favorite, ecofeminism. After I got through with that, I would be treated to such other courses as global climate governance and diversity and justice in natural resources. I'm just wondering why these courses aren't offered in Gillette.
You know, I think my favorite part of that soundbite is listening to you say the words ecofeminism. But the point being is all of these courses that Ken mentioned are diametrically opposed to everything that this state produces, or I shouldn't say everything, what produces the vast majority of money in this state, and those are our extractive industries. And so, again, you know, before you criticize the legislature of perhaps curtailing a gigantic budget by 4%, maybe I really ought to understand exactly what's happening in the at the University of Wyoming. All right, so we're going to continue in just a second, but first I need to get a break in, and then we'll start the discussion again. Back in a minute. The calendar says that it's summer, and you believe it. Well, that's just so cute. But you obviously haven't lived here very long, have you? And you probably think that the weather is just going to continue to warm up. You don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell. Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear?
Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only getting stronger. I checked it the other day, Ken, and there were over 100,000 views last month. Holy crap, my friends.
You know why?
Why?
My mom finally found the link.
It's true.
She's catching up.
It's true. Ken's mom is one of the biggest fans of the program. She's one of the very first people that started listening to the show. Actually, I got one more ad I need to play. I forgot to include it in the ad reel, so take a listen to this one.
Hey, Wyoming Patriots, don't miss the Patriots of the West Freedom Fest this July 10th at the Lander High School Auditorium. Doors open at 5, rally starts at 5:30. Enjoy some barbecue while you hear from Wyoming's boldest conservative voices. Harriet Hageman, Chuck Gray, Gabe Saint of TPUSA, plus Brent Bean, Rachel Williams, Tom Kelly, Scott Smith, and more. This is where real conservatives connect, fire up, and fight for Wyoming values. Great fun, great music, and the kind of energy you'll be talking about for months. Make your plans now to join the fight for freedom. Patriots of the West Freedom Fest, July 10th at the Lander High School Auditorium at 5:30 p.m. Be there. Let's party like it's 1776.
All right, my friends.
WCFL Capital.
If you got nothing to do on July 10th?
Sarah doesn't remember 1976.
No, she doesn't. Nor 1776.
But I do.
Yes, well, we know why. Anyway, so over the break, Ken did look up how many people live in Sublette County. Now, it's a tremendous amount. I mean, obviously, with 9 school districts, it has to be one of the most populated counties in the state. That's what you heard, my friends. Over 9 school districts. 9. Not not 2, not 1, 9. According to Albert Summers, that is. But there are only 9,000 people that live in Sublette County. It's slightly larger than Johnson County. Johnson County has about 7,000 people.
Problem being that physically, this is what they would say, Sweetwater County's a big county.
Yeah.
So it makes it very difficult. Well, when that was set up, that may have been true, but in the modern era of the internet and Zoom and all these other things, the entire state of Wyoming is pretty small.
Yeah.
I'd like to see if there are some school districts in the United States that get up in that maybe 300,000 to 500,000 people range.
Yeah, well, there probably are. Yeah. But by comparison, and the reason I bring up Hazard County, I mean Johnson County, is that they are comparable in size. Now, Johnson County has 1 school district, which covers KC. And in case you're wondering, KC is 42 miles from Buffalo. And so that's still 1 school district, about the same amount of people, and yet Sublette County has 9. Now, that also means 9 superintendents, 9 secretaries, 9 vice superintendents. And they spend, my guess would be, considering that they've got 9 of everything, they spend way more money on administration than they do on kids.
What about Natrona County? How many school districts in Natrona County?
Natrona County has 1 school district.
One.
And Casper is the second largest city in Wyoming, and they've only got 1 school district. And so when you hear claims that, they're getting education, as Emily Madden and Scott Ortiz, the so-called common sense, so-called Republicans, would have you believe. The truth is, there wasn't a dime that was cut from education. The only thing that the legislature did is create a silo around money that was meant for the classroom. So Albert Sommers was on the Cowboy morning show this morning, and actually McDuff asked him a good question. McFarland, I mean. McDuff, I get so confused. Go ahead and play that video.
Recently went down and talked to the interim superintendent in Sublette 9, which is the Big Piney area, and they're worried as well. They can't move money around. They're a very small district.
Yeah, so 1,000 people.
I think this was easy to understand. I wrote an op-ed that I never sent out, also that talks about this. This activity issue is not new with the Freedom Caucus. We had a bill the last time there was a recalibration, and Freedom Caucus members.
Stop! Wait a minute.
That's a faux pas there.
The last time there was a recalibration, my friends, it's been 15 years since the Wyoming legislature did a recalibration on education.
The last time it was successful. We have attempted it. We have attempted it in times past, but number one, there may have been something called the Freedom Caucus at the time, but it is not as it's
not 15
today.
years ago.
No, I'm just talking 4 or 5 years ago, the last time they attempted and failed. But they were so small, they were completely ineffective.
Yeah, there was like six or eight of them.
The idea that the Freedom Caucus is at fault for previous failures is ludicrous.
It's absolutely insane. Well, no, don't back it up a little bit. But so Albert Sommers says the last time we tried recalibration, the Freedom Caucus stopped it. That's impossible, my friends, but it shows you the Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome that's happening across the state. They're just throwing it like it doesn't matter what it is. It's the Freedom Caucus's fault. It's just like Trump derangement syndrome. Doesn't matter what it is, it's Trump's fault. But in this case, doesn't matter what it is, it's the Freedom Caucus's fault. But what Albert just said there, it's not possible and it's not true. I know, Claire, you may have trouble finding that, but it's not true. Go ahead and play the rest of the video.
At that time, brought an amendment that basically was going to silo activities and limit the amount of money that could go into activities. And there's the amendment. I've got
listen
number and all of that if anybody wants it. But this is not a new thing. This has been going on for a while. This idea that we should make categorical exclusions out of everything in the model and follow the model strictly. And I'm a big believer in local control, have been my whole career, and I would rather
school
that
districts,
those
I would hope so.
Local school boards make those decisions on what's important to their parents, their citizens, their kids, than me at the state level. I'm sorry I went on too long, probably.
Oh, no, you're fine. But I mean, I didn't cover legislature as long as some have, but I've watched this tension where either educators or the education lobby is saying, don't you want to pay teachers? Don't you want to pay the people who have your kids all day? Don't you? And then the money doesn't always go directly to teacher pay. I think one educator at the meeting last week in Lander said, yeah, look, you gave us capacity for an 8% raise one time, but utilities bumped 11% that same year. And so we're watching what's becoming kind of an internal struggle. How do you deal with that if not with a silo?
All right, good question.
Yeah, I just don't believe in silos, Claire. I believe in letting.
Yeah, I still believe in them.
I believe in letting local school boards make those decisions.
All right, but Claire's question is a good one. It's the one we ask on this program all the time. So credit where credit is due, McDuff. Good question. And that was, now wait a minute. We've heard forever that we got to pay teachers more. We got to pay teachers more. And then when the legislature gives enough money for an 8.5% raise for everybody, not just teachers, but the janitor, the secretary, everybody, 8.5% raise, that money gets spent elsewhere. Football pads, scoreboards, soccer balls, whatever.
AstroTurf.
But it doesn't get spent in the classroom. And Albert Sommers' only response is, Yeah, well, I just don't believe in it. Yeah, yeah. Well, with 9 school districts, I can't imagine why. But the point is that we spend a tremendous amount of money on education, around over $22,000 a year, and our scores are pretty much mediocre, right in the middle. Now, you'll hear the claim, well, our scores are improving. They're the best in the country. Well, that's not really true. When your scores improve a couple of points, that means you're a couple of points over mediocre. But it kind of means you're the cream of the crap, as Ken would say, because the rest of the schools in the country are crappy too. They're not educating kids. Most kids can't come out of school and they don't read proficiently.
We got to decrap the system, right?
Yeah, I wish I would have recorded that. There was an event over the weekend where Ken spoke, and man, the one time I choose not to record something, I should have. So anyway, but credit where credit is due, McDuff. Precisely the question you should have asked Chai Com Som, Albert Sommers. It was a good question.
Yeah, I want to chime in there. Thank you, Claire. You actually did some, what was it, Rush used to call it?
A random act of journalism.
Yeah, an accidental. She accidentally swerved into it. But no, that's the point. And then, what they're doing now, just to be fair to the folks working on this, there were some things that weren't necessarily the intention of that. But if you go in and try to clean up something that's been a mess for many years, there are some things that are hidden behind the bigger mess. So we clean up the first mess and we discover, okay, there's another problem here. And that's what we're working on now, is how do we make this work and settle things around so that we can do whatever it is that we want to do. And ultimately, I hope it does amount to getting rid of a lot of administrative staff that, quite frankly, we don't need. Teachers, we always hear, are very professional. They know their job. They know what they're doing. And if that's true, they don't need 6 supervisors.
Yeah, now to be fair, I mean, you're right about that. You don't need 6 supervisors. We're kind of in a situation where we have a whole bunch of bee watchers. As Ken likes to say, the Dr. Seuss book, we got to have somebody watching the watchers who's watching the watchers. And pretty much you end up with 9 different school districts and 9 different superintendents. But to be fair, I think that the teachers do a fantastic job. And with the laws that change at the legislature, and I don't know that it's as frequent as people let on, but I think that a lot of teachers, the only thing they know that they're supposed to do is make sure their kids can pass a 9-hour test. It's called the YTOP test. But I mean, we got to have that to gauge education. We got to figure this out somehow. All right, moving on. Irony of all ironies. I'm a big fan of irony. I like pointing it out, but this one was just.
I hate it.
Oh.
Every Saturday, you got to get all the laundry and stack it up there. Go find the irony board.
Yes.
Set it up. Plug in the irony. Make sure that it's full of water.
Do you do a lot of ironing at your house, Ken?
Not anymore. In the military, I did.
Yeah. I bet you had to iron your sheets too.
We'll not talk that.
Okay, anyway. So, irony of all ironies. The cow pie spending 7 pages talking about poop. I'm not even kidding you, my friends. From the cow pie. Amish man confirms Crook County fight over outhouse drove family out of Wyoming. Now, the only reason, well, there's several reasons here, but this article is 7 pages long. And I understand that you work for the cow pie and you're talking about poop. And so the temptation is just probably too much to resist. But really? 7 pages?
So I'm not allowed to discuss what went on because, we certain parameters. But when this article came out, several of us were chatting back and forth, and Chip was among them. And we kept each other entertained for,
for hours.
20 minutes probably. Which is a long time.
So here's what's going on. So this guy in Yoder, Amish guy, he has a couple outhouses on his property. And it doesn't really matter where you go in Wyoming. It doesn't matter what county, even in Laramie County, even in Natrona County, you are going to find outhouses. But in Crook County, apparently, they have a whole bunch of regulations on outhouses. Let me just read you the opening paragraphs here so you understand why the cow pie is talking about poop, aside from, well, I mean, it was just too big of a temptation. And I quote, Abe Yoder moved his Amish family from Wyoming to Iowa after he says Crook County officials threatened him with stiff fines and removing his children over outhouse permits. The Amish man at the center of the Crook County dispute over primitive outhouses has confirmed that the issue prompted him and his family to leave. Abe Yoder told the cow pie from a community phone near his property in Weldon. The Amish don't use phones or email. Yoder recently, let's see here. Here's what Yoder says, quote, "It does very much have to do with our sovereignty and rights." Scott Pemerinke of Sundance, a friend of Yoder's, put it this way, quote, they're moving because they were pressured. Yoder told the cow pie the county had threatened him with $10,000 per day per outhouse on his land that did not have a permit. He threatened to take his children away and asked him to sign a contract giving county officials permission to inspect the outhouses at any time. County officials told the cow pie that they did invoke financial incentive to get Yoder to comply with county regulations. There are so many problems with this. The guy owns his property, and I mean, while I don't know exactly where Mr. Yoder's property was, my guess is it probably wasn't near the town center. It probably was not anywhere near the water filtration system and was so far out in the boonies that the outhouse didn't make a difference at all. But you have, and here's the problem when you have a giant bureaucracy, which obviously exists in Little Crook County, that you have county officials that have to justify their position. That you continually add offices and you say, well, yeah, we have to have water codes, as if the DEQ codes aren't enough. And you notice throughout these 7 pages of article, there's no reference to the DEQ contacting Mr. Yoder because it's his personal private property. A man has the right to do with your property as you see fit. Now, a couple of caveats to that. If you live in the middle of a town, like middle of Sheridan, you're probably not going to be able to put an outhouse in the middle of Sheridan. You can't have pigs in the middle of Buffalo. Now, you can't have a horse and you can't have cows, but you can't have pigs in the center of town because you have county codes or city codes. But when you get outside of the city limits and you live somewhere out in the boonies and there's no water service and there's no sewer service, how in the devil are you supposed to poop? Well, I would assume that the cow pie would be able to answer that question. But the point here is that the Crook County fined these people $10,000 per day per outhouse. And apparently this guy has like 20 outhouses on his property. It's a pretty big chunk of ground. But it is the classic case of government overreach, that do what we say or we're going to fine you into oblivion. We're going to make it so financially impossible for you to exist that you must comply with county codes that don't make any sense, just so a bureaucrat can justify their existence. It is absolutely wrong. And the Crook County should take a very hard look at this because I think it's absolutely outrageous. It goes to the core of what your private property rights are. That you have a piece of property, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. Now, if you choose to live in a city, okay, that's different. You choose to accept the codes wherever you buy your house. But if you buy a chunk of ground 20 miles out of town, there's no reason why you have to abide by city codes. That's stupid.
You might have to put diapers on your cattle.
You might have to do that. You might have to have an outhouse for your ranch hands. Did you ever see that campaign ad where they had an outhouse tied to the back of a horse? It was a Malcolm Wallop ad. Actually, the ad was created by a friend of mine.
It had OSHA-regulated Cowboy.
Yeah. Anyway, so, it's absolutely ridiculous. And Crook County, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. All right, it's a little bit before the top of the hour, but we're going to go ahead and take our second break because at 9 o'clock, we're going to be joined by the Wyoming Speaker of the House, Mr. Chip Neiman. I've enjoyed his videos. I love them. Great source of entertainment. So we'll talk to the man coming up next.
Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. Cowboy State Politics live on a Tuesday, July 4th week. Great to be back, my friends. Thank you for joining the program. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everything you do for this show. By the way, every time you watch a program, make sure that you like, that you follow, that if it's on a different platform, YouTube or Rumble, please leave me a review. I know everybody asks for that. But it really does make a big difference. So if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. So here in about 7 minutes, we're going to be joined by Wyoming Speaker of the House, Chip Neiman. He's, man, the guy's been making some videos that are just absolutely hilarious. And I don't have the soundbite ready, and I shouldn't even bring it up. But at the end of one of his videos, he's talking about Ogden Driscoll being in favor of nuclear waste in Wyoming. And at the end of the video, he's done talking, but you can hear Chip say, "Dude, that's not good." We'll get that video for tomorrow, and we can listen to Chippy say it. But he'll be joining us here in a few minutes. Before we get there, Trump from Breitbart News. Trump takes action to give Americans more freedom to fix their cars. Now, there's a headline that should never have to be printed in America. But it actually goes back to a case involving a guy from Wyoming, Troy Lake, who didn't they put him in jail for deleting the emissions controls off of somebody's car?
I don't remember what all they did to him. And that's a little different because he was violating something else.
It was a law, for sure.
Yeah. Even the military suffers in this right to repair. There are certain manufacturers who have said they don't want to allow military personnel like I used to be to fix equipment they give. Well, what sense does that make?
It doesn't make
any
sense.
In a combat zone, you got to have a factory rep come in and reset the timing or something.
Well, it does make sense from a certain point of view. Now, look at like Ford, for example. Mm-hmm. So if Ford makes cars that are very difficult for you to work on, that means you're going to have to take it to a garage, or you're going to have to take it to the dealership and have them fix it, which means, more money for them. And if you have to, if your computer goes out, you can't repair it, so you replace the whole thing.
I think a lot of the problem has to do with warranties. If we're going to warranty this thing for 100,000 miles or whatever it is, then we want to make sure that all the repairs are done right. And
it's all
certainly
capitalism.
Get that, but
all right. So anyway, this to Breitbart News. President Donald Trump on Monday took action to give Americans more freedom to fix their cars' emissions system. Trump signed a presidential memorandum to the Environmental Protection Agency while flanked by the agency's administrator, Lee Zeldin. Quote, "I think it's very important going to lower the price of your car, and it's going to lower the price of fixing your car. It has a lot to do with affordability. It has a lot to do with a lot of things. Zeldin emphasized that the Trump administration is not seeking to crack down on Americans working on their own cars as past administrations have. Additionally, President Trump has been concerned about aftermarket parts, cheap knockoff aftermarket parts in the United States, harming small businesses and harming Americans. Well, see, it all goes back to, you know, having more control over what you do with emission systems. And, you know, I mean, honestly, a guy ought to be able to fix his own car and not have to deal with the EPA. I mean, that just makes perfect sense. All right, so another guy that makes perfect sense to me, and if you watch any of his videos, they're absolutely hilarious, is Speaker of the House, Mr. Chip Neiman. Chip, welcome to the show.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you, David. How's everything in your world?
Everything's fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing good. Just pulled over here and stopped the tractor from raking some hay here, getting ready to hopefully put up some hay if we can get her done today. The wind has not been helpful, as many and most of the people in the state of Wyoming know. This wind has been nasty for the last couple of days.
Oh man, yesterday it was a near hurricane here in Sherwood. Well, okay, not a hurricane. So Chip, you probably don't know this yet. Maybe you do, but you are the creator of my new current favorite soundbite. At the end of one of your videos, you're talking about Augie and nuclear waste. And kind of under your breath, you say, dude, that's not good.
Oh, gosh, really? No, that was the thing that just came to my mind when he was, you know, I don't know. I completely unscripted. I'm like, man, you have not thought this all the way through, obviously, or maybe the folks that are supporting you have obviously not thought this all the way through, because I really do believe the people of the state of Wyoming want to have something to say about whether or not we store high-level nuclear waste from all over the world.
All right, Chip. So you've been making these videos, and most of them are about just different pieces of propaganda you've got in the mail. Why don't you go ahead and talk to me about them? What started you to create these videos, and what are they about?
Well, I think one of the first things that started it, and I'm not one that does this normally. I mean, this is very unlike me to do these kind of videos. I've never really been a fan of doing that. It's kind of awkward and uncomfortable, but I've kind of learned here of late that it's kind of the quickest way you can kind of respond to some of the nonsense that's happening out there. I mean, you're trying to work and be like everybody else out here and make a living and get things done, and you just, every time you turn around, somebody has posted something or you know, made some allegation, accusation and stuff like that, and I got people calling me. They're like, hey, where's this coming from, and why are they saying this, and this is a bunch of bull butter and bull butter. The thing is like, how do you respond to it? I mean, I can't spend all my day running around here trying to squelch or tramp down every accusation, because there's a ton of them out there, but there's just some of them that are just, it's just so foolish that you just gotta say something. And that was just a quick knee-jerk reaction to try to get some information back out there as quick as you can. Not everybody's going to hear it. I'm sure it's not going terribly far, but it's just, I mean, how do you send a mailer out in response to every mailer that you don't know is coming? And you can't. And so there's a point where people just have to believe either that you're telling the truth and you're who you say you are, or you're not. But in this situation, the first one that came up was recalibration, and Ogden saying, you know, that, hey, he was coerced and that it was a bad bill and he didn't realize it, and all these different things. But then I got to look, I'm like, well, Ogden, you voted for this consistently 100% of the time, and you've always been an advocate for trying to, you know, get education, supposedly. I mean, even when they were attacking you, when you were trying to say that maybe these folks ought to have to be able to provide their curriculum so the parents can see it. And I remember,
yeah, that was his bill.
Yeah, it was his bill. And the education committee, I remember being in education, he came, and I mean, he was pretty upset at the way they attacked him for that, you know. And it's now we turn around here and we actually got a recalibration done. And because not everybody's a fan of it, and we're trying to work through the details, suddenly he's a champion of going back and undoing everything you did. So you're going to be the guy that's going to go back down there and take wages away from people that deserve pay increases and getting that money in the classroom and all these different things so we can be competitive. against other states for salaries and all this stuff. And then I got to looking, and man, David, he voted for it 100% of the time on introduction. First, second, and third reading. When it went to his appropriations committee meeting, he voted for it 4-1. Then it came back, and third reading, it went out. He voted for that. Then when it came back for concurrence, he voted for that. By the way, the Senate voted unanimously for SF 81 on concurrence. So I couldn't even get that bill introduced in my chamber the first time. It failed twice.
Yeah.
And we sent it to the Senate, and it passed unanimously introduction and passed eventually in concurrence unanimously. And I couldn't get 42 legislators, David, to go to start with. And when it left my chamber, there were 52 legislators that voted for it. 10 didn't. 3 of them weren't there to vote. 7 did vote against it. But, and there's some of them out there that are like, see, I didn't vote for this. Well, I get that. Fine. Let's have the discussion. That's why we kept the recalibration committee going. And we're taking and dealing with it here just this week. Or last week, excuse me. We dealt with some other issues that have come up. We're trying to get those things straightened up. So it's a process, and we're going through it. But when he come out and is just like, you forced me, dude.
Yeah.
Ogden, I've never been able to force you to do nothing.
I don't think
tried.
Nobody forces Augie to do anything.
I've tried to get him to be supportive of life legislation, and I had to beg him to put, that onto the docket there when we had the other life bill up there, and he wouldn't do it unless he could have exceptions, and exceptions is what they attacked us on. So, no, it doesn't wash, and that dog don't hunt, and that's what started it, David. And now every one of these mailers that come out by stuff that is just ridiculous it's just an easy way I've found to try to set the record straight.
No, I think they're working, man. And you're a funny guy. If it doesn't work out for you in the legislature, perhaps you could be like do some stand up or something.
Funny looking, maybe, but I don't know about funny.
I have a burning question for you, Chip.
Hey, what's going on, Pendergrass?
Hey, I just wondering, do you have a privy on your place? Do you have an outhouse on your place?
I actually do have
don't admit it.
Believe it or not, I got a 2-hole privy that we actually use for a deer blind up here at the end of a hayfield.
Well, that's convenient, man.
Well, you better watch out, Chip. Your county there in Crook County is going after outhouses. Did you know that?
I know. Somebody told me the other day, they said, Chip, we'd like to see you be number 1 and number 2. And I'm like, no, we're not doing this. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but it sounds like that's starting to stink a little bit. I don't know what's going on there, but
the one thing it did do is entertain us for about half an hour.
Yeah, it was funny stuff. All right, Chip, let's run you through the paces here. So you're running for the Wyoming Senate. Why? You definitely could have gotten reelected in the House. So why make the move to the Senate? What factored into that decision?
I think I never did want to make a career out of being in one chamber. I don't think it's a good idea just to be there and become a piece of the furniture. I think, as much as I can really do effectively, I made it to Speaker of the House by some means of the folks of the support of that chamber, and I appreciate. And you don't do that alone. I mean, that's a corporate effort. Everybody works together to make those kind of things happen, and I appreciate the support I had from the chamber, and I think we got some incredibly good things done in a very short period of time. I've been in there. This is my 6th year now. I went from a freshman legislator to the Speaker of the House. So I'm not here to try to blow my own horn, but I think there's something to be said for the ability to work with people and to get that done and to become that position, an elected position, mind you. So I think I can work with folks against what some people say I can. It's my way or the highway, but you don't do that when there's 62 people in your chamber. You got to have a majority. And I think I can take that leadership ability to the Senate. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Ogden was done. He told everybody, and I hear it almost daily. They said Ogden told me personally that he wasn't going to run again. And so I didn't think there would be any major issue. I would have assumed I'd have had a challenger in this effort, but I just thought, well, the next chamber would be the logical step to move to. And if I can hopefully be effective there and have a little broader voice for more people in my district that I work with and appreciate. And boy, I tell you, when I announced there before we left, it energized him. I mean, he all of a sudden is now ready to go back, and he said he burnt all of his old signs and stuff in that one Cowboy State Daily video and stuff.
Yeah.
He just got rid of them, but I see a lot of old signs that are out being reused again. So I'm not completely convinced that he wasn't planning on running anyway and see, but I don't know. I just feel like as if I have something to offer the people of the state of Wyoming, and especially District 1, Senate 1. And we're certainly going to let the people decide that. But I'm running a race, David, and Ken, as you well know, that's obvious now. I just did another post last night. I got Better Wyoming after me. So I got the hard left liberal arm of the Democratic Party that's encouraging people to vote for Ogden. I mean, that should say something. So it's a definite race where we're going to see they call it a bellwether race, but it's going to be, we'll see what the people want. If they want conservative leadership that has got a record that is consistently conservative, or if they want a more moderate left-leaning that's endorsed by the Dems and the liberals that would like to change Wyoming into Colorado. So,
all right, you use the word conservative. What's that word mean?
Conservative is someone that believes government should do only those things that people cannot do better for themselves. And I think that, and that was a quote from government that was from Abraham Lincoln. It's conservative to me is someone that believes in the sanctity of life, that they stand up for life first. I think that is truly conservative. I think conservatives believe that the people have the best opportunity. When you leave their taxes in their pocket, they know better how to spend those dollars. They are more frugal, I believe. I think they're less adherent to the idea that government is the answer. I think of Ronald Reagan, who was a Democrat that over to be Republican, but he said he didn't leave the party left him. Dems went so far to the left that he couldn't adhere to that anymore. I'm a Republican because I believe in what the party stands for and the platform and all the planks, the 23 of them, and I'm glad to support them. And I think conservative means just that, conservative, trying to do what you can with what you have and to always be looking for ways to grow and to help. And the best way that we as leadership or people that are elected is to help those folks have that opportunity. And parental rights, having choices as far as school is a conservative. I think that conservatives need to stand up for the word. I mean, to me, conservative, and maybe this isn't what you're looking for, David, but I think, my faith is what I use to try to guide my decisions all the way through. I tried to make sure that at some point, and whenever this is all done, and I called home, that it's going to be well done, good and faithful servant. And I think conservative means that you respect God and country and what we've done here, and you appreciate and realize the value of being an American, and that you're going to stand up for these rights that people have fought and bled and died for to give us freedom. And I think conservative means protecting freedom, and I will do that. And my record, I think anybody, I would encourage them to go look at my record on any one of these sites, but specifically just my voting record. I believe I've been consistently conservative in what I've done, and if I've missed the mark, then I would certainly love to have somebody help me get back on track. But I think I'm headed there.
No, I think that's a good answer. So if you could, let me ask you this question. So one of your big issues, it's almost like every session you've worked on a piece of pro-life legislation, and even past the legislature. When they go to court, you've been consistently fighting for the unborn. Would you be in favor of a constitutional amendment on abortion?
They've tried to bring one in the Senate this last go around. We had that discussion when I was working with all the different stakeholders. When we did the heartbeat bill, we decided to bring the heartbeat bill. I would sponsor it and bring it from the House side. Tim Salazar brought a constitutional amendment that we worked with Students for Life to try to craft that would be something that would provide that amendment. But sadly, it failed introduction in the Senate, that constitutional amendment. And actually, my opponent voted against that introduction on that. So as far as me supporting a constitutional amendment, I'm not against the constitutional amendment if that's where we have to get to. I do believe it's going to open a can of worms like we've never seen before, because I think that it's going to be people going to come in here and spend money like we can't imagine to fight to preserve the ability to kill innocent life. I think the players aren't going to be as heavy in Wyoming as what we're going to be outside sources that are going to come in here and flood this state. I mean, there's less than 600,000 people here. And wouldn't it be beautiful if you could get Wyoming, the most conservative state in the union, to somehow vote to enshrine the killing of babies and innocents in their constitution? I'll be honest with you, David, just full transparency, it does concern me. It scares me to throw that out there. I think that we so many times, Roe v. Wade's been around a long time, and we've gotten really used to the idea of being able to end a life if we see fit, and an innocent life. But the legislature clearly has the right. When the Roe v. Wade decision was overturned, they said, you states have the right to decide what you want to do. And it goes back to your legislatures. Now, the legislature in Wyoming has clearly said over and over again that we believe and support the protection of innocent life. The decisions over and over again. And I've said this in other interviews. We have statutes on the books that say if you kill a woman with a baby in her womb, no determination of gestational age, that person will be charged with a double homicide. To me, that immediately says that that is a person with rights. Why would, if it's not a person with rights, would that person that committed the act or killed that woman be charged for 2 homicides if that's not a human being with rights? So that tells me Wyoming's already there. It clearly says in Article 1, Section 38 of our Constitution, Subpart C, that the legislature has the right to restrict these healthcare, because they keep citing that as the right to abortion, or abortion is healthcare. We've got an activist court that is saying that no, that's not what that says.
Right.
Yes, it does. They don't want to say anything about Subpart C. They want to omit that or act like as if it doesn't exist. I believe that we as a legislature have clearly said that Wyoming is pro-life and that we should protect life from conception to natural death. I guess all of that to say this. I guess I would say that if we had to, and that was what it came down to, but I don't know if Wyoming's there right now. I think that there's so many outside forces that are going to come in here and try to skew that it's, and we've seen it in other states. They've told us it gets crazy fast because it's a big deal. People want to kill little kids in the womb. But I told somebody the other day, David, it was kind of funny. What would happen if somebody said, you know what, I've got a bunch of puppies that I want to go drown because I don't want them?
Oh, boy. Christy Nome.
You would go to prison for a puppy, but you can kill a baby in the womb in Wyoming, and it's okay. It's considered health care. We are messed up as a nation. We are completely upside down. And that's where it goes back to the conservative point of faith and believing that all human life is individual, unique, and perfect, and created in God's image, and we have a responsibility to protect it. And that is government, in my mind, as a legislator. I believe that is government's primary responsibility, is to protect life. And that's why I ran.
So, Chip, I too share a little of that trepidation about putting it before the people as a constitutional amendment. And, to enshrine abortion into our Constitution would be horrible. But at some point, that decision is probably going to be made. And I think from where I sit, I'm reminded of Pontius Pilate with Jesus on trial. And he said, I'll give you back Jesus. And the people shouted out, no, give us Barabbas. At some point, the people are going to make their call, and they're going to have to live with that.
Yeah, you're right, Kim. I won't argue that.
I don't want to be, but
I know. I'd rather you not be right, but in my opinion, I think you're right. And I think, I guess here would be my answer. I would like to exhaust a couple other avenues first, or at least try. I'd like to see us do something about our judiciary and how we elect these judges and how we appoint these people. I think the people need to have more of a say in this. And I know there's going to be people that hair is going to burst into flames when I say that. But I've heard it over and over again from other states. You've got to change your Missouri plan for picking judges and for picking, your people that go there and submitted names to your governor.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on what kind of a governor we get. I mean, what are the people going to vote for here? Are we going to go conservative, or are we going to go back to where we're at? and maybe farther, I don't know, left of where we're at in my mind. But that's, it's all, there's a lot in this mix that needs to be kind of thought through. But I think one of the first things, like I say, is, can we look at how we do our selection of our judiciary? I mean, and is that something that we need to reevaluate? When we've got a judiciary that can take Article 1, Section 38, like I said, Subpart C, and say, no, that the ending of that life is healthcare, then we've got a judiciary that is looking at it from the standpoint of strict scrutiny.
Yeah.
And when you use strict scrutiny, that's an activist court.
Yeah.
You could use that same argument to say, well, you really don't need a gun, do you? I mean, prove that you need one.
Yeah, exactly.
Chip, you put your finger on the problem there and the diagnosis. The problem isn't, as you've pointed out a couple times, with legislation the way that it occurs.
No, over and over we've
passed bills. The problem is with the judiciary that refuses to uphold the law as it's written and as they plainly know that it means, and become activists and create their own laws. And so that's the first thing that needs to be fixed before we go trying to amend the Constitution. There's nothing wrong with the Constitution. There's nothing wrong with the law. It's the judiciary.
Legislatures create laws. Judiciary does not create laws.
Exactly,
they interpret the Constitution, and that's the thing. I mean, we legislators elected by the people and are in there creating these laws, and we need to stand by them and hold them up against the Constitution. Well, the fundamental thing that I struggle with, guys, and you guys probably this, is that we have no respect for unborn life. We do not. It's not human, and that's the thing. You can kill it because it's not a human being.
Oh Lord!
And it's like, if it was human, it would have rights. Well, it doesn't have rights. And so we can go ahead and end its little life, no matter, now, thankfully, we added viability. But I've asked people in different forums, it's like, when did your life begin? Did it begin when you drew an air outside of the womb? Or when you could have lived outside the womb with assistance from the medical field? Or did it begin when the cells united and you were created? The color of your hair and the way your hand is shaped and the shape of your nose was determined when those cells began to split. That you are unique
Easy
in
there,
all
Chip.
of the world. So,
Let's not talk about the shape of noses. But
well, we can fix it, Ken. I'm sure there's help out there.
Just imagine, though, the furor if you climbed down a cliff into an eagle's nest and busted some eagle's eggs.
Oh, yeah. You go to prison for that one.
Yeah.
You would be charged for felony charges, and you'd probably be in prison, and they'd break you.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I mean, we're and and not the creator. We have exchanged
the truth of God
human beings for animals, and it placed them on even a higher level than human beings.
Yeah.
And a society is not going to survive doing that. I'm sorry, but they won't. And thank God for our Constitution. And yet they still would love to change that.
Yeah.
They'd like to go up in that if they could, but it's, yeah. No,
All right, well, let's switch gears real quick. Well, say you win your Senate race against Augie. What do you want to do? You got any priorities?
Well, I think the biggest thing we've got to look at is some stuff that we've had a hard time, trying to work through the Senate. I mean, we've seen some things that have gone on that died. What about, like Better Wyoming? I mean, they'd love to have sexually explicit materials in your libraries. We had a piece of legislation that handily passed out of the House that died in the Senate. Who's going to advocate for those kind of things to protect our kids and to provide parental rights? Those kind of things we need to stand up for. I think we need to continue to look at our tax structure, how we do it. I had a long visit with some folks over here the other day that are not happy with fair market value. They said that I can't afford to pay taxes based on what somebody from California, Washington, or Oregon is willing to pay for land adjacent to me. He said, I don't have those kind of resources. We need to look at acquisition. We passed it in the House. That didn't go to the Senate. There's just over and over and over these things that have been gotten through and have been addressed and looked at and passed, and they don't make it. So I think just bringing a conservative voice over there to support good, solid, conservative legislation that is supported by 80% or more of the people, I think is important. And I think that as far as some of the different things that I can bring, Well, I mean, boy, it's a long list. And I guess when you look at some of the different issues that are out there, what about, continuing to work to work actively to reevaluate how we select our judges? I think Senate confirmation is something we really need to sit down and have a real meaningful conversation. And I would be glad to bring that legislation to say that, listen, we've got to reevaluate how we do this and see what happens. But it's going to, there's a long road ahead of that before I can get to there. And Ogden and all of his help are working diligently and spending must be a scandalous amount of money.
It's got to be huge.
It's got to be huge. I'm going to be amazed. I think it's going to be amazing to see the amount of money they're going to spend on this race. But from the sheer number of mailers and texts and stuff like that, I got a text from American Freedom something. I think I got to do some digging into it. I started last night, but I think that's another arm of the Dems, the Democratic Party. The Democrats are all in for Ogden. I mean, they don't want me over there. And I guess, you're known more by your enemies than you are by your allies, So I got every liberal left-leaning organization in the state, evidently, and outside of the state coming after me. So when the flack's the heaviest, I guess you're over the target. So I must be doing something right.
Well, you're certainly popular with them.
Right there with you, buddy. Right there with you.
I bet you are, Ken.
All right, Chip. Well, if my viewers want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
307-290-0366. And by the way, that number's been put out by all these left-leaning organizations, and they did get that right. They've got my cell number. By all means, call or text me or whatever. House phone's 307-467-5736. And yes, this ranch, Joni and I still have a landline. And so we, that way, or you can go Neiman, the number 4, Wyoming.com. That's our website, or you can follow me on Facebook or whatever. I guess I don't post the stuff. I don't know how, but I just make that stuff. Having the guy that takes care of that for me put that on there, but I'm not real savvy on it. But anyway, I'm going to try to refute or at least push back on this nonsense, because boy, there's a ton of it.
There's a bunch of it. Well, Chip, I'll be waiting for your next video. I really like them. Thanks for taking some time this morning, and keep me updated on how things are going.
It's an honor, gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity, and you guys keep up the good work. And thank you, David and Ken. I do want to say this. Thanks for being available and putting this out there for people to get this information. I think all these different candidates, I've watched you do interviews with a lot of them, and you ask good questions and straightforward, hard questions that not everybody thinks. If you're trying to coddle the conservatives, I've seen you ask some questions that folks are really make them think and really help us to better understand who's running and what they stand for. And I appreciate that from you and Ken and the folks that support you, because information is critical, and straight information is more than critical. And we are in a society right now with AI and all of this crap. I think people just want authenticity.
I think so.
They really, and you guys bring that, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to more interviews and all that you guys are going to do to bring transparency to this process, because we desperately need it.
I appreciate it, Chip. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll talk soon.
I'm going to rake some hay. You kids have fun. Talk to you later.
All right, that was Representative Chip Neiman, Wyoming Speaker of the House. He's got a race on his hands. I mean, he is not kidding when he tells you that he gets all sorts of mailers, and every single one of them are full of a bunch of bull crap. Which it's not just his race; it's a lot of them. Now, granted, there's not a lot of political mailers that make it to my house for obvious reasons. Though there have been a couple local ones that we're gonna wait a little bit to talk about them, but. Most of the time, I don't get the real nasty ones because, probably they don't want me to know what they're saying. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we'll continue with the program.
The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
This is Brent Bean, Republican for governor. Wyoming families know what matters: law enforcement, emergency services, and supporting strong schools, agriculture, and energy production. But state government keeps growing while priorities fight for resources. That has to change. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending and priority problem. Vote for me on August 18th, and I'll put Wyoming priorities first. I'll return taxes to you, the taxpayer, and make Wyoming number one. Paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics on a Tuesday. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everything you do for this program. So, kind of a big day. It is June 30th, and the open range record. I told you that we were going to release the results of our congressional poll. Now, before I get there, before I show you what the results are, we're going to have two debates on July 16th down at the Rialto Theater in Casper. There's a gubernatorial debate, and we're also going to have a congressional debate. Now, it is impossible to have a coherent debate with 10 people. Everybody remembers the 2016 Republican primary debates, how it was just I don't know how many candidates they had on stage. But it's not a debate. It ends up being one of them ended up being a shout fest. But if you have that many people, candidates don't have enough time to get their thoughts out. It's like asking Ken, hey, Ken, can you describe all the problems with Wyoming's budget and do it in 45 seconds?
No.
All right, well, that's the problem. So you got to have time for candidates to talk, and the only way to do that is to kind of whittle things down a little bit. So the Open Range Record has been running a poll for the last month, and the question is simple. Who do you want to hear from? And there's 10 candidates, so pick the top 5. So here are the results from the Open Range Records congressional poll. Number 1 on the list is Chuck Gray, and then Steve Freeze, Kevin Christensen, Bo Beitman, and then Jillian Balow. And then the other 5, in order, Frank Chapman, David Geralt, Reed Reisner, Keith Goodenough, and Richard Dodson. So later on today, I'll be sending a letter to Secretary Gray, Mr. Steve Freeze, Mr. Kevin Christensen, Mr. Bo Beitman, and Ms. Jillian Balow, and inviting them to our debate. And I'll also have an article posted on the Open Range Record, so it's there. You can see it. The other thing I'm going to do is, and perhaps I should tell you how we ran the poll. You ever notice how you do online polls and it'll let you vote over and over and over and over and over and over and over again? Well, ours would do that too. However, on the back end, I made it possible to weed out all the duplicate votes, because I'll tell you, some of these candidates have some very, very enthusiastic supporters. There were a couple of candidates that had, in one case, there was like 30 votes for just one person. And so I weeded all those out, and this is what we're left with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you the data file that says, hey, here's the votes. And I'm also going to provide you the original data file that's got everything in it. So everything's transparent. You can't accuse me of weighting the poll in some way, shape, or form. It's absolutely straight up, and those are the 5 candidates. So check the Open Range Record later. And if you happen to be one of those candidates, Chuck, Steve, Kevin, Bo, or Jillian, you should be expecting a letter from me
very soon. And as it relates to the open range record, over the weekend, we published a story about Eric Barlow's campaign, and it was discovered that one of his campaign staff used a Sweetwater County School District parent messaging app called Parent Square to ask for volunteers to help out Eric Barlow's campaign. And here is the, let's see if I get it. Yeah. So, Ken, if you'll show on my screen, this is the message that went out in Sweetwater County, and it says, "Hi all, Susie Von, I think it's Ahrens, is looking for volunteers to walk in the parade on Saturday for the Eric Barlow campaign. If you'd like to walk in the parade and hand out campaign materials, contact her," and then there's the phone number. So now, this is a school messaging app, and somebody in the school, Ms. James, is asking people for volunteers for the Eric Barlow campaign. Now, after we published this article, which, by the way, has been, I don't want to say that it's gone viral, but it's been read a lot. Well, 4 hours, before I back up there. So a couple of hours after we published this article, the Eric Barlow campaign put a note on the article, a comment, if you will, and it basically said, yeah, they're not campaign staff. They're not part of our staff at all. Except that if you look at this little piece from Sweetwater Now, Barlow announces campaign leadership for governor. And if you scroll down just a little bit, there it is. Fred and Susie Von Ahrens, or Ahrens, however it's pronounced, and Bruce and Carla Pivick and Becky Constantino. So it's very clear that the Eric Barlow campaign does have these people on staff, or at least in January 13th of this year, they did. And so the Barlow campaign puts this comment on this article, and then they say that, no, they're not part of the campaign. Well, they absolutely are. And as it turns out, there's a little bit more to those folks, and we'll be publishing a follow-up to this piece. And so this turned into be a much bigger deal than I thought it was. And the original post to this article has a huge number of comments on it. There's a lot of people that are really irritated. And they should be. The school should not be used for a political tool. And in this case, the Barlow campaign, or staff on the Barlow campaign, absolutely did.
Yeah, every time something like this happens, I think, what if the shoe was on the other foot?
Man.
What if one of us did that? What if Chip did that?
Yeah, we would be crucified. And if they couldn't do it literally, they would darn sure try. But this is the double standard that exists. Now, the Cow Pie, let me just show you their piece. Let's see here. Where did it go? Yes, here we go. Here is McDuff's defense of it. Sweetwater County School District apologizes for Barlow campaign message on parent app. And pretty much all the article does is hits the high points. And then, there's lists out what the message said. But then goes into this defense of Sweetwater County. Now, does McDuff give credit where credit is due? No. Of course, she's not going to mention that it was the open range record that broke the story. Oh, and by the way, if you're asking, there's the school district statement that they put out. It's a lengthy thing, basically saying that, we made an error. Oops. Our bad. We'll do better.
Yeah, that's on the open range record site. I just want to make sure there's no confusion.
Yep, this is the open range record right here. And I think that if we look at the Cow Pie, I think that they also printed, maybe it's linked in there. I don't know. But anyway, it's McDuff's defense of that article. And then I think the other thing is they realized how much attention our piece was getting. But anyway, pay attention to the open range record. We're going to have some more follow-ups to that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are very, very interested to hear about that. So this one, I found this next piece to be kind of disappointing. Not kind of disappointing, really disappointing. And it's on Breitbart News, and here's the title. Only 8% of Democrats consider America the greatest country on earth. First, How could you not? You're an American citizen. Okay, there's point number one. It's your country. Point number two, America is the most prosperous, the greatest source of lifting people out of poverty that this world has ever seen. It is the most charitable country. Nobody in the world gives as much charity as the United States of America. Not just the country, but the people inside the country. Citizens are the most charitable. And by the way, the most charitable group of people in America are Republicans. It's not Democrats. No matter how much they talk about welfare, they evidently don't think so with their own checkbook. But we are the most powerful country on the planet. We are the greatest source for good that this world has ever known. And really, I mean, we are the people that the rest of the world waits for.
An example of that, some people would say, yeah, but your founding fathers were slave owners. At the time this nation was founded, the entire world was, and always had been,
slave owners, yes.
Stuck in slavery.
Now,
guess who ended that?
We did.
This nation.
Now, to be fair, Great Britain ended the slave trade before we did. All right, just to be perfectly honest about it. But even Thomas Jefferson, and this is one of the big mischaracterizations in school history books. Well, Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. And that's true. It's absolutely true. Did he release his slaves when he died? No, he didn't. However, and maybe you could call him a big giant hypocrite for this, but the biggest part of his original draft of the Declaration of Independence was all about how evil the slave trade is. In fact, he called it an inexorable stain. I believe I might be wrong about the stain part. But tomorrow, I've decided, Ken, tomorrow on the podcast, talking about the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, because it's truly tremendous. And I mean, if you don't understand the context in which all of these things were written, you're not going to understand anything. George Washington, yep, he was a slave owner. But he's also the guy that tried numerous times and failed to outlaw slavery in the Virginia House of Burgesses. And they were successful a couple of times, but Great Britain told them no. The king said, sorry, you can't do that. George Washington called slavery a stain on his soul. Read the things that he wrote, and you'll understand the context in which all of these things happen. We can't judge the past based on where we are today. That's called historiography, or at least it's what I call it. It's judging the past based upon current values. Now, it doesn't say that those things were right. Obviously, slavery is wrong. However, you have to understand the times at which you're talking about.
There's another factor, too, that sometimes people don't really consider, and I'll use by illustration something from my family. Back in the early 70s, my dad, who was a pastor, purchased a piece of property right at the bottom of Shell Canyon.
Okay.
It had a cafe, it had a gas station. It also had a liquor license that went with it. And I remember questioning him at the time, do you think it's a good thing for an ordained minister
to be selling booze
to have a liquor license? And he said, without the liquor license, this property is worth 1/3. He said it's good stewardship to maintain the liquor license, which I thought was a clever response. But when you look at, these people that own these plantations, and there was a lot of truth in that too. If you got rid of the slaves, it devalued it. So they could make an argument, and I'm not saying the argument is necessarily completely sound, but you can make an argument that it was good stewardship to maintain that. But what they did do is what counts. And what they did do is eradicate slavery eventually.
Yes. No, the truth is, has America done some things that were really bad? Yes. Okay. Slavery was, I don't want to say inexcusable, but it was, there's a list of things that are terrible that you could do, and I'm pretty sure slavery's near the top.
Abortion's pretty bad too.
And
we don't seem to have a problem doing that.
Okay. But has America done some good things? Yes. And you have to be honest when you're looking at your country. Yes, we've done some bad things, but we've also done some very, very good things.
We invented hot dogs.
Yeah. The mark of character is when you admit that you were wrong and then you fix it. One of the hallmarks of having a good character is that you say, you know what, I screwed up there. Let me fix it, and I will do better. That is what makes America great. That we possess the ability to recognize the things that we've done wrong and fix them. And so when you look at the history of the United States, we have done way more good things than bad. Because of the United States, the world is not run by the Nazis. Because of the United States, we've given more charity to the world than any other country. Because of the United States, the Berlin Wall fell. And I think that one of the bigger ones, and I think that this goes unnoticed a lot of the times, because of the United States, more people have been lifted out of poverty than ever were before. Before the United States, the vast majority of the world lived in poverty. Now, the vast majority of the world is a lot poorer than the average American. The truth is, even the poorest among us is richer than most of the people that live on the rest of the planet. I mean, even a poor person today probably has a cell phone and a pair of tennis shoes. There's a lot of people that would only dream of that. Now, you might say, oh, well, then you're just a bunch of wealthy Americans. Yeah, we're also a bunch of really charitable Americans. We're also the nation that rushes to the aid of the rest of the world. We just put in jail the head of the guy that used to be running Venezuela. They had a big giant earthquake. Guess where Americans are right now? Searching for survivors and helping clean up the rubble in Venezuela. It doesn't matter what it is. Americans are there.
Yeah,
this country's amazing.
I have friends that have been missionaries to South Africa since the mid-'60s. And you look at their ministry now, and you look at the kids that come in there, it's mainly to children, and you look at the clothing that they have, the clean water that they have, a lot of other factors that are in there, the technology, the effort, the money, all of that comes from the United States. And there's no place else like it. I've been all around the world. I've been in a lot of places that are pretty sucky, and it's good to be here.
It's an amazing place. America truly is an exceptional country. And I mean, I just find it sad that most Democrats don't realize that. But there again, I mean, most Democrats don't even know why they believe the things that they do. And my only hope is that if you were to sit down with the average Democrat and just talk things out, they would probably agree with you, at least go part of the way. So let's talk about some of those Democrats. Even one of the biggest, most outspoken Democrats say that, the Democrat Party's a little too crazy for me, and that's Bill Maher. So Bill Maher is your classic liberal. He's not one of these wackos that thinks, we should be lopping off the perfectly fine body parts of little children. But he is a liberal. I mean, he does believe in bigger government and more government spending and, everything that the Democrat Party, minus the lunatics, believe in. But this is from The Blaze. Quote, Republicans do not need to become perfect to win disaffected liberals. They need only to stop asking voters to pretend reality is fake. Bill Maher did not suddenly become a conservative. This is what makes his recent comments to Vice President J.D. Vance so politically revealing. Bill Maher, is still Bill Maher, a liberal comedian, a secular critic of Christianity, a supporter of abortion, and a longtime enemy of the religious right. He's not about to show up at a Turning Point USA conference in a red baseball cap. He's not quoting Milton Friedman at CPAC, and he's not becoming a Baptist. Bill Maher is not moving right because Republicans suddenly became perfect. He's moving right because Democrats moved the left into madness. In a recent conversation with Vance, Bill Maher said his 2028 vote is, quote, in play. He said he could imagine voting for J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio if Republicans nominated the right candidate. That, my friends, should terrify the Democrat Party. Maher does not represent the average American voter in every respect. In fact, I would argue that he's probably to the left of the majority of Democrats anyway. But he represents something dangerous for Democrats, the liberal who still remembers what liberalism used to be.
He remembers when Democrats imagined themselves as the party of free speech, civil liberties, working class people, and common sense. He remembers when liberals mocked religious fundamentalists rather than replacing them with secular versions in HR departments, faculty lounges, and school boards. Maher's point was not that Republicans have become irresistible. It was that Democrats have become repellent. And that is the point. Ken, earlier on in the program, or maybe it was Chip that mentioned that when Reagan became a Republican, he didn't say that he's moved farther to the right. He said the Democrat Party left him. And I think that is true of a lot of Democrats. And I'm saying not the people who are loud on social media. I'm saying the people who are Democrats because their dad was a Democrat and their grandpa was a Democrat. But really, when it boils down to it, they still vote on their pocketbook. They still believe that this country is great. They still believe in the Constitution. They just think we ought to have bigger government.
Just as a little aside, I was at Dave Friedenthal's announcement when he announced his campaign for governor. And he said, I've been a lifelong Republican, but the Republican Party left me, so I became a Democrat.
Yeah, exactly.
An interesting picture in my mind. Okay, out of the fire and into the pan.
Exactly. All right, so let's move to some more national politics here. The Supreme Court. Chip brought it up on the state level, and I think this is a discussion worthy of having, that, and there can't, I don't think there really is a question that we have an activist court. We do. I mean, they wrote law out of whole cloth that now abortion is somehow health care, though that doesn't appear in Wyoming statutes anywhere. And yet we have judges on the bench that think it's their job to legislate. Well, at the national level, there are members of the Democrat Party that think that is entirely okay. In fact, one of those is Cory Booker, and he says that the Supreme Court is corrupt. Go ahead and play the video, Ken.
Welcome. I want to jump right into the tension in the Supreme Court rulings today. As I told viewers at the top, one ruling basically gives a lot more power to this president that this court didn't give to other recent presidents, eliminating nearly all of Congress's more than a century-old power, I think it's about 90 years, to create agencies that act with independence from the president. Vox writing that it's worth noting the decision was handed down alongside the Fed case I mentioned, which strongly suggests members of the Federal Reserve are independent from the president. If you look at the practical implications, it basically means this president can fire all of the independent agency chiefs, making them less than independent. We can put this up, but can't fire, I think this is number 7, can't fire just the members of the Fed. As a Judiciary Committee member and a legal scholar in your own right, a lawmaker and law writer, does this make any sense what happened today?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. First of all, and I'll come back to this point, we have a corrupt and compromised court in ways we've never seen in American history, continuing to make decisions that pull power away from everyday Americans, taking away their reproductive rights to control their own body, pulling away their voting rights. More recently, when they tried to access the court to sue big corporations like Monsanto and Bayer, it just recently in the last days pulled away their power to be able to successfully fight against corporations. Now here they are again, making a decision that will benefit the wealthy and the powerful.
See, it's all the wealthy and the powerful. So Cory Booker says that the Supreme Court is corrupt. How dare they rule that the chief executive should have authority over the executive branch? Now, they're referring to a recent Supreme Court decision. I think it came out yesterday. But it was, I'm going to use the term split decision, but I don't mean it in terms of the vote, because there's two different things in it. The Supreme Court ruled that the president cannot fire members of the Federal Reserve at will because Congress designed the central bank to be free from political interference by law. By law, Fed governors only serve 14-year terms and can only be removed for cause. So if they commit, for instance, if they commit a crime or malfeasance in office or something like that. And the Supreme Court created an exception for the Fed. Now, while they expanded presidential power over most independent agencies, it explicitly ruled that a president cannot fire Federal Reserve governors at will. And one of the reasons why is, this goes all the way back
to our founders, that we needed an independent banking system. And so there's a historical precedence of the Fed, perhaps not in its, the way that we consider the Fed today, but historically, this was baked in. Okay, it was Congress that created this, and it goes all the way back to the early years of our republic. Now, the other part of it, the Supreme Court ruled that the president can fire the heads of independent agencies. You see, the Democrat Party, Democrats in Congress, instead of taking back power from the executive branch and resting it with the legislature, and we talk about about this when we talk about Governor Gordon, but for a long time, the legislature ceded their authority to the executive branch. And so instead of Congress passing a law to say, hey, President, we're the legislative branch, we're the ones that make laws, so reining in executive orders, things like that, the liberals in Congress created a lot of independent agencies and put them under the purview of the president. And the idea being, well, no, you can't touch this agency over here because they're independent. Well, first, that doesn't have any grounding in the founding of our country. And there's no historical precedent for that. So the Supreme Court ruled that, yes, the president can fire heads of independent agencies. And so it's kind of a split decision. The Supreme Court doesn't often do this, but there's two important points in here. Independent agencies, yes. Federal Reserve, no. And so the president can't get rid of that guy, no matter how much he wants to. All right. Well, we pretty much come to the end of today's program. We're going to call it a day right here. But tomorrow on the program, let me check my calendar here, and I'll tell you who we've got on deck for tomorrow's edition of the show. If I can get to my calendar. Oh, there it is. Okay. So tomorrow on the show, we have CJ, who is running for the Wyoming Secretary of State. And we'll also have our pal Neil Jeske. He's going to be in the studio at 9:30. So a couple of interviews tomorrow. Should be a pretty entertaining time. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. I'll see you tomorrow, my friends.